You return to the house where your childhood once lived, carrying the hope of finding a trace of warmth you longed for. But when the door to your old room opens, nothing feels familiar, only glass cases, cut-out articles, and shining trophies, all belonging to your brother. A heaviness rises in your chest, as if every memory of yours had been erased and replaced by someone else's glory. In that moment, you ask yourself, if even your small room is taken away, where do you truly belong? If you've ever felt this way, stay with me through this story. And if you find yourself touched along the way, a gentle like or subscribe will be more than enough for us to continue this journey together. You stand before the room that no longer exists, your chest tightening. What you see feels like a slap against your memories. Glass cases glinting under the light, trophies stacked high, newspaper clippings plastered across the walls, all bearing your brother's name. And your own awards, your little certificates, your victories. They're shoved into cardboard boxes, gathering dust in the garage. In that moment, you didn't just lose a bedroom. You lost your place in the very home where you grew up. Memories crash over you, pulling you back to when you were 12. That year, you bought yourself a plastic toy microphone with the money you'd saved. To most, it was worthless junk. But to you, it was treasure. Every time you held it close, you imagined your voice traveling outward, reaching someone who wanted to hear it. Your audience was a lineup of teddy bears and dolls on the bed, but in your heart, they were community. You delivered your broadcasts with pride, whispering news bulletins to stuffed animals. Yet just as you began to speak, the familiar roar from the living room drowned you out. "Yes, that's my boy," close quote, your father shouted as your brother scored. The cheers, the clinking glasses, the celebration, all of it swallowed your fragile words. Then your mother opened the door, placed her finger to her lips, and said softly, "SHHH, sweetheart, your father's watching the game." The door clicked shut, and you sat there holding your toy microphone, eyes stinging. That was when you first learned. Your voice was always second place. From then on, you trained yourself to be quiet, to shrink your dreams so you wouldn't bother anyone. But inside, a fire smoldered. You whispered a promise to yourself. "One day, I'll make them listen." As you grew older, you threw yourself into schoolwork. You wrote for the student bulletin, joined the broadcast club, and won speech competitions. The first time you brought home an award, your heart swelled with hope that your father would be proud. He only smiled faintly, patted your head, and said, "You're lucky, you know. You don't carry the weight your brother does. He's the one with real responsibility." Lucky, that word cut deep. Lucky to be overlooked. Lucky to be forgotten. In your senior year, you finally saw your dream clearly. A prestigious university with the best journalism program in the country. You slid the brochure across the table, pointing at the bold red letters. "This is the top broadcasting program. I want to study here." Your father shook his head. "That won't put food on the table. Pick something practical, business, maybe." Your mother chimed in, gentle yet dismissive. "Sweetheart, communication degrees are more like hobbies." Their voices were soft, but their words were heavy, crushing. Still, you applied. And you were accepted with a partial scholarship. When the letter came, your hands trembled, joy surging through you. But then came the numbers. $20,000 left uncovered. You laid the breakdown on the kitchen table, hoping for a miracle. Your father glanced at it, his face darkening. "That's too much. With that degree, how would you ever pay it back?" Close quote. Days later, the entire family drove your brother to his college orientation, car packed with brand new luggage, brand new clothes, and even a brand new car to get him around. They hugged him, celebrated him, promised to visit. You stood there quietly, realizing you were never part of that picture. So you chose another path. A community college. Night shifts at a coffee shop. Pinching every dollar to buy second-hand equipment. You built a makeshift studio in a tiny corner of your apartment, foam panels stapled to the walls, a microphone rescued from a pawn shop. Every night after your shift, you sat there, hit record, and spoke into the silence. "If they won't listen, I'll find those who will." And somehow, it worked. Week after week, the numbers grew. First a handful, then hundreds, then thousands. Comments started appearing. "Your story is my story too." For the first time, your voice felt like it mattered. Yet deep inside, there was still a hollow space. Because even if the world listened, part of you longed for that one moment, your parents sitting down, headphones on, saying, "We're proud of you." That moment never came, but the hope never left. Maybe you're wondering, why would a child keep clinging to hope, even after being dismissed so many times? Close quote. Because sometimes, the only thing keeping you tethered to the world is the fragile belief that love will eventually come from the people who were supposed to give it first. And what about you? Have you ever felt this way, screaming just to be seen, yet treated as though you were invisible? If you have, share it in the comments. Maybe your voice is the one waiting to be heard. And if you want to keep walking alongside stories like this, tap that subscribe button. Not a loud demand, just a quiet connection, enough to carry these voices further. You thought that if the outside world recognized you, the ache inside your chest would finally ease. But as the number of listeners climbed into the hundreds of thousands, your family stayed silent, as though nothing had changed. Even when you send the link to your podcast that hit the charts, your mother replied 3 days later with just 4 words. "That's nice, honey." 4 words, flat and hollow, as if 500,000 people leaning in to hear your voice meant nothing compared to one successful pass on the football field. Then came Thanksgiving. You pulled into the familiar driveway, the yard crammed with relatives' cars. The scent of roasted turkey and sage floated through the air, carrying you back to childhood memories that had always felt slightly out of reach. You wheel your suitcase inside, and before you could even greet anyone, a voice boomed from the living room. "There she is. The career gal. Still doing that little radio thing." Close quote. You forced a smile. "It's a podcast. And yes, I'm still doing it." Your father walked out of the kitchen, a beer in hand, clapping you on the shoulder. "She's got a few listeners now. Hobby's taking off a bit, isn't it?" Close quote. A few listeners. You thought of the 500,000 downloads from last week and felt your throat tighten. When you climbed the stairs, nothing could have prepared you for what you saw. Your childhood bedroom was gone. In its place stood gleaming glass cases stuffed with trophies, shelves lined with autographed footballs, and newspaper clippings framed in neat rows. At the center, your mother dusted a particularly large trophy. She turned, startled. "Oh, sweetheart, we've been meaning to tell you, we needed a proper place to showcase Everest's accomplishments. Your things are boxed up in the garage." You scanned the room, searching for even the smallest trace of yourself, your writing awards, your graduation photo, the certificate from the speech contest. Nothing remained. Your voice trembled. "You could have asked me first." She sighed. "You're never home. You're always busy with that little storytelling project. Come help with the stuffing. Everyone's waiting." At dinner, your father raised his glass high. "To Everest, the pride of the family, soon to be drafted into the pros." Close quote. Laughter and clinking glasses filled the room. Your water glass sat untouched. In that moment, you understood. No matter what you achieved, you would always be outside their circle of pride. Later that night, you wandered into the garage, pulling open the boxes labeled with your name. Old journals, crumpled certificates, papers you once treasured stacked haphazardly beside cans of paint. Your chest tightened. Then your phone buzzed. An email glowed on the screen. A major media group wanted to offer you a distribution deal, the kind that could transform your career. All they needed was financial references and a co-signer for an office lease. Hope surged as you turned back inside, found your father, and said, "I need to talk to you." You explained the opportunity, voice trembling with both fear and excitement. For a moment he just stared. Then his expression hardened. "You want me to risk my credit on this internet thing? These shows aren't real jobs. What happens when it all falls apart and I'm left on the hook?" Close quote. You forced yourself to stay steady. "I'm not asking for money. Just a signature. This is the biggest chance of my life." He shook his head. "When you get a real job, then we can talk. Until then, no." He turned away, switching on the television. Once again, the sound of a football game filled the room, louder than your voice. That night, you sat on the floor of your old bedroom, now a shrine to your brother, surrounded by trophies shining in the dim light. You lifted your phone, pressed record, and whispered, "This is what invisibility sounds like. This is how it feels when the people who should see you don't." Tears ran down your cheeks, but your voice did not waver. "They will never see me unless I force them to." Back in your apartment, you picked up the contract and signed it with only your name. Your hand trembled, but your resolve was solid. You gathered every family photo from your desk and tucked them away in a drawer. In their place, you set down your cracked plastic toy microphone. From that night on, you believed it. You didn't need anyone else's signature to prove your worth. Success did not arrive overnight. There were long nights when you recorded episode after episode, your voice hoarse, your eyes heavy from working the late shift. But you never stopped. Each week brought a new episode, a growing audience, a wave of messages from strangers who told you, "Your story is mine too." You realized then. Sometimes family won't listen, but the world is waiting too. And maybe you felt that too. Maybe you've known what it's like to be dismissed at home, but embraced by strangers who understand. If you have, you're not alone. Share your story in the comments. You might be surprised how many people will say, "That happened to me too." And if you found something familiar in these words, if you felt seen in a way you weren't before, tap the like button. Or subscribe, quietly, without pressure. Let it be a way of reminding each other that voices like yours, like mine, are worth hearing. You returned to your apartment after Thanksgiving carrying nothing but emptiness. The boxes left in the garage, your father's sharp refusal, the bedroom turned into shrine for your brother, all of it echoed the same truth. There was no space for you in that world. But on your desk lay the freshly signed contract, bearing only your name. For the first time, the path ahead depended on no one else but you. Slowly, deliberately, you began to build a foundation that carried your name alone. Each podcast episode became a brick in that foundation. The download numbers soared, the messages from strangers multiplied, and you realized what you were creating wasn't just entertainment. It was refuge. It was proof that invisibility could be transformed into resonance. People wrote to you about their own forgotten stories, their silenced dreams. And you began to see yourself not as a lone voice, but as part of a chorus of the overlooked. Each night, you glanced at the cracked plastic microphone sitting on your desk. You thought of the 12-year-old child who whispered into it in a bedroom that no longer existed. That child had promised. One day, someone will listen. And now, millions did. Then came the message from your team. We've passed 1 million monthly listeners. You froze. Outside your window, the city glittered, but inside, a single question burned. Do they know? Do my parents know? Close quote. You opened your laptop, composed an invitation to the launch of your company. Each keystroke carried both hope and fear. This is the most important day of my life. Please come. You checked your phone every hour for 6 days. On the morning of the launch, a single text arrived. Sorry, sweetheart. Everest has playoffs tonight. Your father says good luck with your thing. That night, you walked into a ballroom lit by chandeliers. Rows of journalists, executives, and industry leaders filled the seats, anticipation humming in the air. You scanned the front row, 5 empty chairs, each marked with a reserved card. Mom, Dad, Everest, Aunt, Uncle. Your chest tightened, but you steadied your voice as you stepped onto the stage. Thank you for being here tonight. Grey Media is more than a company, it is a vision for voices once overlooked. When the candor began, a reporter raised a hand. Who inspired you to start your company? Close quote. The question landed like a blow. Your gaze flickered to the empty chairs, then back to the sea of expectant faces. Maybe, close quote, you said softly, it came from knowing what it feels like to be forgotten. The room fell silent. Cameras clicked furiously, capturing the crack in your carefully maintained facade. But instead of turning away, people leaned in. You caught the eyes of several women in the audience, and in them, you saw recognition. They knew exactly what it meant to be invisible. Later, in your hotel room, you kicked off your shoes and collapsed onto the bed. Your phone rang. Your father's name lit the screen. You answered, and his voice thundered. Are you trying to embarrass us? That little comment is all over Twitter. Everest's teammates are asking questions. Do you even think before you speak? Close quote. You inhaled slowly, then replied. If you feel embarrassed, maybe there's a reason. His anger spiked. This isn't football, Soraya. This isn't real. People don't care about your little shows. Your voice stayed steady. Millions do. Just not you. Silence stretched on the line, followed by his only defense. Your mother is upset. Then the call ended. By morning, your words had gone viral. Headlines blazed. Young entrepreneur speaks truth about being forgotten. Thousands of emails poured in from women across the country, telling you their stories. Subscriptions doubled overnight. Partnerships you once chased now came knocking. And yet, beneath the glow of the spotlight, you felt something hollow. That question, who inspired you? Close quote, still echoed. You had answered honestly, but deep inside, part of you had always hoped the answer could have been, my parents. But it wasn't. And it never would be. Some wounds, you realized, can't be healed by those who caused them. They can only be stitched by your own hands. Your office buzzed with energy. Team members congratulated you, partners celebrated you, the press demanded interviews. But at night, in the quiet of your apartment, you let yourself remember the sound of that reporter's question, and the way the silence in the room had felt like a mirror of your childhood home. Have you ever felt this way? Have you ever given everything, knocked on doors, raised your voice, extended your hand only to find that the people you wanted most to see you had already turned away? If you have, then you know the truth. Sometimes recognition doesn't come from blood. Sometimes, it comes from strangers who decide. You offered him a chair, but he remained standing. I lost my contract. My son is eating instant noodles every night. You've got sponsors, millions of listeners, money flowing in. Are you really going to let your own nephew suffer? Close quote. Your chest ached, but your voice stayed even. When I was working night shifts, building this from nothing, where were you? When I asked for one signature, just one, Dad turned away. He clenched his jaw. That was different. You're the daughter. You cut him off. The pride of the family. Yes. But that doesn't give you the right to treat me like a wallet. The conversation ended with the crack of a slammed door. His final words lingered in the air like smoke. You've always been jealous. You sat in silence, hand resting on the toy microphone locked in a glass case. Jealous? No. You had never envied his cheers. You had only ever wanted to be seen. In the days that followed, a new storm gathered. Everest vented online, painting you as the ungrateful sister. Your parents called your business partners, whispering doubts. Your mother's voice echoed through your voicemail. Family takes care of each other. Have you forgotten that? Close quote. You listened to the messages in your office, exhaustion seeping into your bones. But then you looked up at the faces of the team you had built. They were not bound to you by blood, yet they had chosen to stand with you. And in their eyes, you realized something. Family isn't only blood. Family is the people who choose to stay. One evening, you switched on the microphone and began to record. You didn't name anyone. You didn't say father or brother. But you told a story. You spoke of a daughter erased from her own home, of a text that said good luck with your thing, close quote, of the empty chairs in the most important night of her life. Your voice lowered to a steady rhythm. This is the story of the children who live in the shadows. Of dreams dismissed as hobbies. You titled the episode The Voice They Ignored. Within 48 hours, the numbers shattered records. 10 million downloads. Emails flooding in. I thought I was the only one. You just spoke the words I've held in for years. People saw themselves in your story. And you knew you had finally touched the place that needed touching. Of course, your family heard it. Your father called, his voice trembling with fury. Take it down. Everyone knows you are talking about us. You replied quietly. I never named you. Only those who recognize themselves would think it's about them. Silence stretched. Then he hung up. Your mother called next, her voice breaking in a way you had rarely heard before. We always loved you. How could you be so cruel? Close quote, she pleaded, as though your decision to finally tell your story had been an act of betrayal rather than survival. You closed your eyes, inhaled slowly, and steadied your voice. If you truly loved me, you would have listened years ago. There was no shouting, no anger left to give, only the quiet exhaustion of someone who had waited too long for words that never came. On the other end of the line, silence lingered. Then the connection dropped, and you knew it wasn't just the call that ended. A bond cracked long ago had finally split apart, leaving nothing but fragments. Yet, strangely, beyond the ruin of that fractured circle, something else emerged. The world outside seemed to open its arms wider than ever before. Articles appeared overnight with bold headlines. The forgotten child speaks. Journalists dissected your words, not as scandal, but as truth long overdue. Invitations poured in from conferences, panels, and networks, asking you to share your story with rooms full of people who had also once been unseen. In the polished glass of corporate boardrooms, in auditoriums filled with women scribbling notes with trembling hands, you found recognition not of fame, but of resonance. And in your own office, as you watched your team leaning over laptops, debating, laughing, building, you realized that you had crafted something beyond a company. You had built a sanctuary. A place where no one's voice would be invisible again. Still, life has a way of sending reminders in the most unexpected forms. One evening, as you sat alone with your computer, an email arrived. The subject line was small, almost shy, yet it pulsed with a weight that stilled your breath. From Tyler. Your nephew. The boy you had only glimpsed in family photos, the boy who had always been described to you through other people's words. You opened the message cautiously, half expecting anger disguised as reconciliation. That was the family's usual rhythm, words dipped in sweetness but lined with barbs, designed not to heal, but to pull you back into obligations you had finally escaped. Instead, the words unfolded with surprising gentleness. Dear Aunt, I listened to your podcast about invisible kids. I think I understand why you don't talk to my dad. But I don't want to be like that. I want to be different. Can we meet? Close quote. You froze. For a moment, suspicion flared like a reflex. Every gesture from the family had once been a chain disguised as care, disguised as duty. You had learned to read between the lines, to see how kindness often came laced with expectation, how reconciliation was just a mask for guilt's return. And so your first instinct was to brace yourself, to close the message before it could bloom into another wound. But then your eyes moved further, and the next lines unraveled every defense you had built. I like writing stories. I don't want to play football. Will you teach me how to record, like you? Close quote. You sat there for a long time, your hand hovering above a keyboard, your breath shallow, as if even the act of exhaling might shatter the fragile bridge that had just been extended toward you. The glow of the screen caught in your eyes, and in that glow, memories cascaded back. Nights of your own childhood surfaced, when you whispered into a toy microphone, begging the silence to answer. Nights when your voice felt too small, too breakable, too easily dismissed. Nights when you longed for just one adult to say the words you needed most. I believe you. And now here was a child, your nephew, reaching toward you with the same longing. 2 days later, you met him. The cafe was tucked away on a narrow street, a place you had chosen carefully, a place far enough from the familiar haunts of your family to feel safe. Its windows were fogged slightly from the October chill, the air inside rich with the aroma of roasted beans. A soft hum of jazz threaded through the low murmur of conversations, filling the silences that stretched between hesitant words. Tyler sat across from you, only 12, yet already carrying himself with the quiet caution of someone who had learned to measure every gesture. His shoulders hunched inward as if already bearing a weight far beyond his years. His eyes darted around, scanning the room, then settled on you with a mixture of hope and fear that pierced straight through your guarded calm. From beneath his jacket, he pulled out a small box wrapped in newspaper. He slid it across the table, his fingers trembling slightly. "Mom found this in the garage," close quote, he said, his voice low but steady. "I thought you should have it." You unfolded the paper slowly, your heart pounding with a strange anticipatory ache. When the object inside revealed itself, your breath caught in your throat. It was the toy microphone, the one that had once been your anchor, your only witness, your secret doorway into believing that your words mattered. Its plastic surface was cracked, faded from years in the dark. Dust clung to its edges. Yet it was still intact, still holding the weight of your small hands. And carved faintly into its side, just as you remembered, were the trembling letters you had once etched. SG. Tears pricked your eyes. You ran your fingers over the familiar grooves, tracing the ridges as if they were lines of an old map leading you back to yourself. That small, fragile object had once carried your entire world. You had spoken your dreams, your grief, your hidden truths into it, long before you ever found a real microphone. It had been tossed aside, left to gather dust in a box, but somehow it had survived, and now, impossibly, it had returned to you through the hands of the child who shed your blood. Tyler leaned forward, his voice barely above a whisper. "When did you know your voice mattered?" Close quote. The question hung between you, fragile and heavy at the same time. You looked at him, the way his fingers fidgeted with the edge of his sleeve, the way his eyes shimmered with both fear and defiance. He was not asking out of idle curiosity. He was asking because he needed an answer, because he was searching for permission to believe that his own voice could matter too. Your throat tightened. The truth was, you still weren't sure. Even after the podcast, even after messages from strangers thanking you for your words, even after speaking rooms had filled with silence just to hear your story, some nights you still questioned whether any of it mattered. But you couldn't give him doubt. Not now. "I don't know if there was one moment," close quote, you began, your voice softer than you intended. It was more like 100 tiny moments. Like when I realized that even if nobody in my family wanted to listen, someone else out there might. Or when I understood that silence wasn't protecting me, it was erasing me. So I kept speaking, even when it felt like no one cared. And little by little, I found people who did. Tyler nodded slowly, absorbing every word. "I don't want to play football," close quote, he said again, more firmly this time, as though repeating it might make it truer. "Dad says it's the only way I'll be worth something. But I don't care. I want to write. I want to make stories people hear." His voice cracked on the last word, and you felt a pang of recognition deep in your chest. That cracked, the mixture of determination and fear, was the same sound you once carried in your own voice. You let the silence linger, the soft jazz filling the spaces where your words faltered. And then, gently, you reached across the table and placed your hand over his. "You don't have to be who they want you to be," close quote, you said. "And you don't have to wait for their permission to be who you are. If you love writing, if you love telling stories, then that's what you should follow. Not because it's easy, but because it's yours." Tyler blinked rapidly, fighting the tears that threatened to spill. For a moment, he looked younger than 12, just a boy longing to be seen. "Will you teach me?" Close quote, he asked. "Not just about recording, but how to keep going when it feels like nobody's listening." Close quote. You felt the toy microphone heavy in your palm, its cracked surface grounding you. You thought of the long nights you had whispered into it, of the years when your words vanished into silence. And you realized, this was the moment the child version of yourself had been waiting for all along. Not for someone to hand you a perfect future, but for someone to say yes. "Yes," close quote, you whispered. "I'll teach you." The weeks that followed became a quiet ritual. Every Saturday, you met at the cafe, sometimes with notebooks, sometimes with nothing but a toy microphone between you. Tyler would bring scraps of stories he had scribbled in the margins of his schoolbooks, adventures about dragons who refused to fight, boys who traded football fields for typewriters, girls who saved kingdoms with words instead of swords. You taught him how to shape his voice into the microphone, how to hold silence like a companion instead of an enemy. And in teaching him, you began to relearn yourself. Each lesson you gave him was also a reminder to your own heart that a voice doesn't need to be perfect to matter, that stories don't need to be polished to carry truth, That sometimes the most important audience is the one child across the table who finally dares to believe in himself. One evening, as the cafe lights dimmed and the world outside turned silver with rain, Tyler looked up from his notebook and said, "I think maybe our voices are like sparks. Even if you only light one candle, that's enough to keep the dark from winning." You swallowed hard, unable to speak. Because in that moment, you knew. His candle had been lit. And maybe, just maybe, so had yours. You reached out and took his hand gently. "I didn't close quote," you admitted softly. "Not at first. For a long time, I thought it never would. But I knew one thing. If I didn't speak, I would disappear completely." In that moment, you weren't talking to just your nephew. You were speaking to the 12-year-old version of yourself who had sat in a dark room, holding that very microphone, waiting for anyone to listen. And in Tyler's eyes, you saw something you had never been given. Belief. Clear, unshaken, unburdened belief. The chain of silence, the cycle of invisibility that had haunted you for decades, would not continue.